It's a true honor on behalf of our family at Certified Angus Beef to share a little bit about Al, the retail director. You know, the one thing I know is that if you knew Al, you already know about Certified Angus Beef, along with half the world's population, because anytime Al's path crossed anyone's path, he told them all about the product and why it's the only beef that they should ever eat. Well, let's flash back to 2002. At Certified Angus Beef at the time, we were looking for someone to lead our retail efforts. And we had interviewed quite a few people, hadn't had much success finding what we were looking for to really bring the experience and the knowledge of retail to Certified Angus Beef. And our VP at the time, Larry Cora, knew Al, and as Kenton had shared, Al was working for Clements Markets, had chosen to carry Certified Angus Beef as his only beef there at the store, and was very committed. And so we thought, we'll call Al, and he might have some ideas of someone that he knows that would be interested. And Larry tells the story that when he got Al on the line, the first words out of Al's mouth were, "Well, why don't you hire me?" Quite a surprise, I think, as Larry collected himself, never thinking that Al Kober would consider moving to Ohio. So he shared with Al that, you know, it would involve a move to Ohio for you and Judith, and he quickly responded, "That won't be any problem." I'm not sure he checked with Judith at that moment, but maybe that was one of the times he got his way. I don't know, but they moved to Ohio, and in February 2nd of 2002, he joined our team at Certified Angus Beef. Over the next 8 years, he led our retail efforts there. And I have to say, in the first year of working with Al as the director of retail, I can remember no less than a dozen retailers, including Bob Bueller from Bueller's Markets there in Worcester, that said, "Finally, you guys figured it out. You hired someone that knows retail, that has been there, that has the scars to back up the knowledge of retail." And we heard that over and over again, just the experience and how excited they were to have someone like Al with all his knowledge lead Certified Angus Beef in its retail efforts. Over those 8 years that he was with us, our retail sales grew by more than 100 million pounds. And I realize with the national deficit now we talk about billions and trillions, and millions don't sound a lot. But let me tell you what 100 million pounds of Certified Angus Beef is. If you fill up semi-trucks full from front to back, and you park them out here on Route 77, bumper to bumper, that's a caravan that extends all the way to Cleveland, Ohio. That's a lot of beef, and a pretty bad traffic jam, too. But you know, it's not his leadership at retail. It's not his experience that was vast, not the 50 years of retail knowledge before he ever came to Certified Angus Beef, and the additional knowledge that he would gain and experience in working with the brand and with our team that Al is most remembered for. To share a few industry quotes, these are some comments that came from those that had a chance to work with Al in the industry. They said, "Al is the perfect example of a businessman at his best. Honest, ethical, and a nice man. Al was a true gentleman. I enjoyed his contagious enthusiasm. I met Al briefly in 2008. It was apparent immediately how amazing a guy he was. His energy alone was inspirational and motivational." Someone else wrote, "A true gentleman and positive example to many." Someone else, "He set the bar for the rest of us." And finally, I think this is the one that Al would probably smile the most over. "Al, I was a better man for knowing you, and your values will be a reminder to me that there are still special people in this world." You know, I think whether you're from the family, from the church, from the industry, there's 4 words, and I think I've heard all of them mentioned already this morning in just the comments that have been made. But the 4 words that I think stand out, and they certainly aren't exclusive, but they're the ones that I think resonate for me and those of us at CAB. The first is integrity. It defined everything about Al. He had no shortcuts. If a job was worth doing right, that's the way you did it. You didn't take a shortcut. He'd say what he meant, and he meant what he said. And he'd tell you the way it was, even if it maybe hurt you a little, but by gosh, it was the truth. His faith, his character was everything. It's who defined the person of Al Kober. The second was energy. When Al came to our company, he was coming at an age when most of us are thinking retirement. He joined us at that point. But what was amazing is he had the energy of 5 people younger than him. He'd come in an hour early. I remember on the first day, he was sitting in the parking lot because he didn't have the key code to open up the doors at CAB, and he was there before any employees had arrived on his first day at work. And I think we finally threw him out of the office at about 6 o'clock that night, or maybe 7 o'clock, and said, "Don't you have somewhere to go?" But you know, even with that, I remember one time I was looking out the window of my office, and I saw Al sprinting across the parking lot. And I mean, I was almost in panic at that mode, because I was like, what is wrong? Something has happened to Judith or the family, or, you know, he's just taken off across the parking lot. And so I finally tracked him down. I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "Nothing." I said, "Well, what were you running to your car for?" He said, "Because I could." And for the next 8 years, he would run to his car, run to his lunch. He'd run, sprint to the car, sprint back to the door. We finally just realized that's just who Al was. He wasn't in a hurry. He just did it because he could. Teachable and willing to teach. You know, I have to admire. Every year I get older, I find I don't want to change. I'm really not into learning new things. I'm kind of getting at that stage where, it's like, okay, I kind of got it. But the one thing you always found with Al is he was desiring to learn. I mean, before anyone at our company even knew what a Palm Pilot was, he had run out, bought one, and was excited to show us what all you could track on a Palm Pilot. And when the iPhone came out, I think he was among the first of our staff to go out and buy one and, again, show off all the gadgets and the new technology. He was always proud when he could learn something from someone. He said he loves to learn. He always felt someone had shared with him, you can always learn from someone that crosses your path. But it wasn't just his desire to learn, it was his desire to teach. And if you want to see Al at his best, you put him in a room with about 40 meat managers, and you let him show them how to cut something new, how to merchandise something, how to make more profit for their store. He loved to teach, and it didn't matter who it was. If he had a listening ear, he was going to teach. He would talk about his ABFs. He would talk about the lessons that he was going to share or had shared, and he was excited about teaching. Knowing Al, he was young at heart. He had the youthfulness and the eagerness to learn and to teach that I've yet to see in anyone half his age. But the fourth word that to me defines the person of Al is passion. I looked up in the dictionary to see what it had as a definition for passion, and it was boundless enthusiasm. Boundless enthusiasm. Enthusiasm without borders. I remember the story he tells of being at an industry conference, an AMI conference, where there's a lot of meat people. That's where they get together and they talk about meat. And he was on one of the panels, and apparently an animal activist had walked into the group unbeknownst to the attendees, and they had a panel, and at the end, this activist stood up and said, I understand that God's against meat. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was a vegetarian. Well, Al very calmly approached the pulpit. At that point, it became a pulpit. It was a lecture up to that point, but it became a pulpit, and he enlightened that individual that in Genesis 9:3, God said, and it's on pretty good authority when it comes from God, that every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. And he said, if God said it, that's good enough for me. And I guess that person sat down and didn't have another question the rest of the conference. It was that kind of passion. He would approach retail stores and tell them they were crazy if they didn't carry certified Angus beef. He just owned that kind of enthusiasm. But it wasn't just meat or beef that he was enthusiastic about. It was his wife. I remember their 50th anniversary celebration we had at the office. And you would have thought those two had just gotten engaged and were getting married next week. 50 years later, they had grown in their love and their passion for each other. His passion